No deal would mean a hard border. Exactly what are you trying, which is exactly what you're trying to avoid. So are you looking for solutions to make the backstop work?
What we're looking for is what we've been looking for from day one, is an assurance that Brexit decision that the United Kingdom has made, one that was made against the wishes of people in Northern Ireland, one that Ireland was not consulted about, where we want a legal guarantee and an operable mechanism which will ensure that we don't lose all the progress that's been made in the past 20 years in Ireland in terms of our peace process and the Good Friday Agreement. So I know a lot of people, when they talk about Brexit, they talk about the impact on trade and jobs and on the economy and immigration and all those things that are really important. For Ireland, it's something very different. We have peace in Northern Ireland and Ireland. We've had closer cooperation north and south, power sharing most of the time. And at the foundation of all of that was the European Union, because EU membership swept away so many of the differences between north and south and between people. And we don't want that to be undermined. And what the backstop is a means to an end. It's a legal guarantee and an operable mechanism by which we know that there won't be a hard border as a consequence of Brexit, and that's why we've had to hold so firmly on it.
But is there any room for compromise in order to avoid a no deal, which could make it worse?
Well, you know, we've always been open for compromise, and we've always been willing to listen to any proposals that the UK government may have. And as the European Union has said on several occasions, if the UK was to change its red lines, then of course our position could evolve. But let's not forget that this withdrawal agreement is an agreement that was drawn around all of the self-imposed red lines that the UK set for itself, leaving the customs union, leaving the single market, not accepting the jurisdiction of the ECJ, and the backstop was designed with them. We would have been very happy, for example, to accept a backstop that only applied to Northern Ireland, that didn't apply to Britain, but the UK government specifically wanted a UK element to it.
And Taoiseach, that's very clear, but would you at least be open to exploring a compromise if it means that actually you don't get the hard border with the no deal?
But the objective is avoiding a hard border. The backstop is the means by which we achieve it. So if there's another mechanism, if the UK can come forward with the proposal that achieves a hard border, that gives us that legal guarantee, or avoids a hard border, then of course we'd listen to that. But unfortunately, that's not what I'm getting. I'm hearing from a lot of people, a lot of British politicians and British actors saying, of course we're against a hard border and we're also against a backstop. But the only alternative they can offer to a backstop is a promise to sort it out later, or a promise around technologies that don't exist yet. We're not going to give up a mechanism that we know will work, that's legally binding.
Have you seen these technologies? Have you seen these technologies?
They don't exist, and nobody's been able to show them to me. So, you know, so why would we give up a legal guarantee and something that we know will work in practice for a promise to sort it out later, or a promise to invent technologies? That's just not a serious position. So people who are saying that they're against a hard border and they're also against a backstop, that's a contradiction.
What about a 5-year? I mean, we're hearing various proposals, right? What about a 5-year on this and then some kind of arbitration?
What happens after the 5 years?
You negotiate to arbitration. What I'm trying to understand, Prime Minister, is that it seems like we're locked down, right? No one's willing to give from any of the sides. The worst case scenario for you would be a no-deal Brexit. So is there anything that you can do to make Parliament go with the solution? Well,
I think we've given a lot already. Let's not forget this is a decision which Britain has made. It's a decision which potentially will have great harm for other countries. So, you know, we're the ones who, you know, it's and yet we're the ones who are already giving. And, you know, the UK wanted a review clause in the backstop and we agreed to that. The UK wanted a UK-wide element. So why is it the country that's being victimised is the one that's always asked to give?
I want to get out of the British newspapers, out of what our great team, Emma Ross Thomas, and her people are doing in this every single day. If I'm in Ireland and I go north on Route 205, I end up where there were major battles in the 1922-1923 period. What's that borderline? It's right by Cassidy's filling station, just before you go into Northern Ireland. What's Route 205 going to look like if they screw this up?
Well, at the moment, it looks like the border between
it's beautiful.
Any two.
It looks like a tourist mecca.
It's totally open. If things go very wrong, it looked like 20 years ago.
Well, it's not going to look like Donald Trump's border, but I want you to paint a picture of what that border is going to look like.
It would involve customs posts. It would involve people in uniform, and it may involve the need, for example, for cameras, physical infrastructure, possibly, you know, police presence or an army presence to back it up. The problem with that in the context of Irish politics and history is those things become targets.
Exactly.
And we've already had a certain degree of violence in the last few weeks.
Let me be the ugly American. Let me be the ugly American here and ask indelicate questions of the Prime Minister of Ireland. Is there an opportunity here? Not now, not within the voting of this. And what's the vote? Tuesday, and all the silliness that's going on now. Is this an opportunity for you to reach back to the 19th century and further reunification?
What we have in the Good Friday Agreement is what's called the principle of consent. And that says that if the majority of people in Northern Ireland want unification, that it will happen. So that's already provided for in the Good Friday Agreement. But I don't like to have that mixed up with Brexit.
Right.
I don't think it's helpful. It adds a whole new constitutional element to it as well. And bear in mind, there are huge numbers of people in Northern Ireland who've joint British Irish citizenship and British identity, and we have to respect that.
Are you talking to the DUP?
Yes, not negotiating, talking, but this is a negotiation that happens with the EU, including Ireland on one side of the table, and the UK on the other. The DUP is a political party that represents maybe 30% of people in a small part of the United Kingdom. And when we talk to Northern Ireland, it's important to remember that we talk to other people too. And the farmers support this deal, business supports this deal. Most of the parties representing most of the people in Northern Ireland actually support this deal.
Taoiseach, what are the chances that Brexit would actually never happen?
I think that's very unlikely at this stage. Obviously, as somebody who's a passionate European and believes in what Europe has achieved, I'm really sorry to see the United Kingdom go. And I'm particularly conscious that it's being done at a time when the vast majority of younger people want to stay and want to retain their European citizenship. But that is ultimately a decision for the British people, and we have to respect that.
What kind of deal do you think we'll end up with? A Canada Plus, a Norway type agreement?
I think that's part of the difficulty, is that the United Kingdom was split down the middle on whether they should leave the European Union or not, and those who want to leave don't agree among themselves as to what that meant. And really these things should have been thought out. We could work with a Norway Plus model, we could work with a Canada model with special arrangements for Northern Ireland, but ultimately it's the people who caused all this and started this who have to come up with the solutions.
Mr. Prime Minister,
we can help, but
the history of this.
Sorry, hold on. When you say you can help, what does that mean?
It means essentially what we've been doing for the last couple of years is trying to negotiate an orderly Brexit, with the transition period, for example, giving businesses and people time to adjust, with special arrangements for Northern Ireland that allow us to avoid a hard border. There are lots of things that we can do, but ultimately, and bear in mind the vote in the House of Commons, a lot of MPs didn't just vote against the deal because of the backstop. Some want a second referendum, some want to remain, some want a different model. They want to stay in the single market, for example. So you have lots of different reasons as to why people voted the way they did.
Could you change, Prime Minister, some of the words in the political, agreement? Intent to make Parliament come around?
Yeah,
backstop?
Absolutely. We've said as Ireland and as the European Union on the political declaration, which is the future relationship, that we'd be open to making changes to that. But we shouldn't forget the basic principles here. This is a problem caused by Britain. We came up with a solution, which is the deal that's on the table. Now their Parliament has rejected it. Shouldn't they be offering us something? Why are we the ones who are constantly being asked to help them solve the problem they've created? What are they offering us?
What are they offering you?
Nothing at the moment. But we will wait.
You wait with bated breath, at least for the vote Tuesday. If you look at the reach of this back to the 19th century and the tortuous path, I think, of Gladstone and all the failures on the way to where Ireland is today, all of it is about a domestic United Kingdom debate, which is simplistically conservatives and Labour. Is Labour missing in action this time? Would you like to see a different tack as a foreign prime minister from Labour, the division between Mr. Corbyn and others within his party?
I think it's definitely a complicating factor that the two major parties in Britain are divided on Europe and are very divided on this issue, and that's a complicating factor. But the best thing I think you can do when you're Prime Minister of another country is to stay out of other countries' internal politics. So I'll openly dodge that particular question. What I have to do as Taoiseach, as Prime Minister of Ireland, is look after the interests of
What does a backstop look like in the Irish Sea? If we have Route 205 coming into Northern Ireland and you don't like what that's going to look like, explain to our global audience what the wall or the backstop, the customs will be split down the middle in the Irish Sea.
Yeah, well, what's envisaged if this agreement is ratified, isn't any walls. What's envisaged is that any checks that might have to be done, checking animals, checking food products, checking goods would be done at the ports and airports, done, in Dublin, in Rosslare, in Cork, in Belfast, and that's a very different picture because a lot of these checks already happen in ports and airports. It would be more than currently exists, but it would allow us to avoid physical infrastructure on the land border. Bear in mind, this is the land border that goes through farms, goes through villages.
And critically, the technology point. This is important because many of the interviews that Francine and I have had, it is technology to the rescue. And I do not hear that theme from you.
No, because I have yet to have anyone demonstrate to me a technology that can look into a truck and tell me whether there's hormones in the beef or not. What is that technology?
Taoiseach, what proposals at the moment have you heard about that are doing the rounds within the European countries about a possible compromise?
Well, there's no particular proposals at the moment. We have a withdrawal agreement agreed by 28 governments, including the UK government, and the political declaration. It's still sitting, if you like, in the UK Parliament. The United Kingdom has not come back to us.
Don't each countries, we heard about the Polish proposal, we heard, there must be other countries in saying, come to you and say, Taoiseach and Angela Merkel, why don't we do this, would this work, right? You must, troubleshoot around the table.
Yeah, well, I should say, it's, I had a good chance to talk to the Polish Prime Minister yesterday, and he assured me that the words of the Foreign Minister, the suggestion of the Foreign Minister was an attempt to be helpful, but not the position of the Polish government. Of course, we're talking, there's lots of EU Prime Ministers here, 7 or 8 of us, and we've all talked about Brexit. But ultimately, we took a year and a half coming to this compromise, coming to this solution. It is finely balanced. It's not perfect. It involved give and take. If the UK is now unable to ratify this agreement that took 18 months to agree, there's an onus on them to come up with solutions.
Could you tweak anything in the backstop that you would be happy with in order to avoid a no-deal Brexit?
I don't know what that means. Fundamentally, as I said earlier, the backstop is a means to an end. And it's the objective that matters. And the objective is a legal guarantee that we will never see the emergence of a hard border on the island of Ireland as a consequence of Brexit. That it's the objective that matters, always.
Mr. Prime Minister, we mentioned earlier the Good Friday Agreement. I see it wander through the papers, and I see what appears to me where a younger group really doesn't know this history, the challenges of your Ireland, the challenges of Northern Ireland as well. Are we being naive about the history of the Republic of Ireland? Are we being naive about the risks we're taking if we screw up Brexit?
I think people, certainly in Ireland, are very aware of it. Maybe younger people don't remember what it was like when we had a hard border. I certainly do. And I think Irish people are very aware of those risks. And we spent a lot of time over the last couple of years really explaining those to our European partners, and they've been very much behind us in this. A country like Germany, obviously, which has a history of partition, history of hard borders, understand it very well. Other countries perhaps less so, but we've been really overwhelmed by the strong solidarity that we felt from other member states.
Taoiseach, Ireland has a ban on bankers' bonuses, but also pay caps for bankers in state-owned banks. Is it time to change that?
Not at the moment. I imagine they would like it to be changed, but
Monday or Tuesday.
But certainly, certainly one of the big pressures that we have now in Ireland. We just balanced our budget for the first time in a long time last year. We are increasing pay for public servants, people who work for the government, but there are growing demands to increase it by even more, to the extent that we would have to start borrowing money, and borrowing money to fund pay increases is never a good policy. So I don't think we could suddenly allow big increases for bankers and then say to our teachers, our doctors, our civil servants, our nurses, well, no, you can't have a big pay increase. I don't think that would be fair.
What's the mood like in Davos?
It's good, yeah.
Has it? How many questions on Brexit did you get per hour?
It's been a mix of things. You know, on the political side, very heavily Brexit. On the business side, very much about investing in Ireland, and I met a lot of CEOs, and the pipeline of future investment in Ireland is really good. You know, we've got very pro-business environment, a lot of talent. Obviously, know where we want to be in the world, which is at the centre of the European Union in the single market, and there's a really strong pipeline of investment coming to Ireland, and that's reassuring.
One final question. I don't care at all about Brexit. Can you get more flights on Aer Lingus between JFK and Dublin? Can you work on that?
I can try. It's a really good service.
It's a very good service.
But what we'd like is some more direct routes to some other places in the States. We've no direct to Texas, so I'd love to.
There's your surveillance break exclusive. We need Michael Dell. I know you're watching. We need Dublin, Austin. Get it done.